what are we doing? Race issues. It's not often we get round to covering the issues of the millions of Latinos in this country. But this report came in this week of how badly that they're struggling as well. And they're in a fairly dire crisis to do with their businesses and food insecurity. And it stated that 5 million Latinos are at risk of bankruptcy in a new study that was revealed on Sunday. And pre-pandemic, they were the fastest growing group on Main Street and contributed 4% to the US GDP. Now, Latino companies that applied for the Paycheck Protection Program have seen a 21% drop in revenue since February, while their costs for PPE and other safety measures have risen. Now, pre-pandemic, they were the fastest growing group, but with 5 million at a risk of bankruptcy, and their demise portends a troubling trend that can upend communities across America, according to the statistics. Now, with the costs of retrofitting their businesses to deal with the pandemic, which resulted in a huge amount of expenditure that exceeded their revenue in the summer, and they had to spend a lot just to stay open because of ridiculous regulations, and they ended it with a negative 11% margin, and they are now cash flow negative and are on the brink of going out of businesses. Now, the study Biz2 Credit analysed the financial performances of 35,000 companies, including 3,000 Hispanic-owned businesses that submitted funding requests through the company's online marketplace. And all the companies included in the survey have less than 250 employees and less than 10 million in annual revenue. And the report covered small businesses across the country in a wide range of industries, from startups to established companies. And construction was the largest category of business, representing 18% of the Hispanic-owned companies in the study. And it also was followed by 16% services, accommodation and food services of 15%, retail 10%, and transportation and warehousing 8%. Now, the research conducted by Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative in May, and it's got worse since, found that 86% of Latino business owners surveyed reported immediate negative effects of the COVID-19 fake pandemic. And nearly 2/3 of respondents said they would likely be out of business in 6 months. 2/3 would be likely out of business in 6 months, and this was done in May, if COVID restrictions remain in place. Well, they have. And the study also found out that Latino business owners are nervous that customers might not feel confident enough to come back, and that many may not have money to pay for things. Now, as a group, Latinos are expected to comprise of almost 30% of the population by 2050 in America, compared to 18% today, and revenue of Latino-owned companies jumped 61% from 2017 to 2020, and they are a growing sector of the economy and contribute to its overall strength, but in 2020 they are struggling badly. A fairly sobering story, that. And this is why we are all in this together. And what was playing out here is the clown's version of Hunger Games, for those of you who have watched it. We are all pushed into districts separated by colour, and we're all left to fight each other. But you know what happened in that series? Love won and ended the Hunger Games movie. And that is why coming together and loving each other will end this nonsense. This next piece is a fairly detailed expose of some of the fun and games going on to do with race again and who's involved in it. And I'm going to give credit to a Captain Joseph R. John for this piece. It's all his, with some of my comments added. And what he was talking about is the Sunrise Movement. Where have we heard that before? And it says, and why so many young white students are being recruited by them. The Sunrise Movement teaches students that white supremacy is the reason for systemic racism in the US and that climate change is a white problem. And for 2 years, the left of centre liberal media establishment covered up the facts about the Sunrise Movement's recruiting and training programme. Now, the video, he outlines the 2-year behind-the-scenes training programme of white students on how to participate in race riots when an event triggers a race riot. And the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, is the true force behind the Sunrise Movement, Antifa, and CAIR in Minnesota. Now, when Keith Ellison was the deputy chair of the Democrat Party, he moved the Democrat Party towards socialism, knowing that socialism is Marxist-inspired. It's actually communism, which is actually Zionism, and also socialism, and also fascism. It's all the same. Just pull it all in a bundle and replace it with Zionism, and then you've got the picture. Now, Keith Ellison is an Islam convert, and he called for a separate country for blacks in the US and wrote racist articles under his real name, Keith Hakim Mohammed. Oops. And the Muslim Brotherhood International Terrorist Organization paid for Keith Hakim Mohammed's pilgrimage to Mecca back in 2008. Ellison strongly supports Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam. Islam just means ISIS hidden. ISIS, Ra, El. And he has disrespect for the US Constitution, and he said its wording was inspired by the Bible. Ellison has also been close to the Communist Party USA, which is probably AIPAC, and held a fundraising event in the home of Minnesota Communist Party chair Erwin Marquardt. Erwin. Perhaps our resident MeWe chat person can get a look at Erwin Marquardt. I'll have to check that up, whether it's born in, born to again. But Keith Ellison is a very close associate of Luis Enrique Marquez, who flies the communist flag and is the leader of Antifa in Portland's Rose City. Antifa rioters are the violent communist domestic terrorist foot soldiers, and the logo on the Antifa flag was created by the German Communist Party. Actually, it was Social Democrat Party. Democrats, same thing. And Ellison's photo is pictured on the internet holding the manual of the Antifa domestic terrorists, and their manual calls for uprising and riot in the US. Attorney General Keith Ellison is the de facto leader of Antifa and CAIR in Minnesota. Ilhan Omar, one of his creations, has the same campaign manager as him. And when George Floyd was killed by a rogue police officer, I'm not too sure he was, thought it was staged, employing improper restraint procedures, Antifa had the trigger it was waiting for to initiate race riots. Members of CAIR were present to film George Floyd's death outside Cup Foods in Minneapolis, and then CAIR distributed the video worldwide. And within 24 hours of Floyd's death, thousands of the Sunrise Movement trained rioters looted and torched Minneapolis as police officers stood down and let it burn. Now, CAIR organised the looters, Antifa organised the arsonists, Black Lives Matter led the rioters. And this was according to Real News Network Peggy Traeger Tierney, who wrote this on June the 16th, 2020, or that piece anyway, the information for that piece. And the chant from rioters was that police officers have been killing black youth to defund, eliminate and replace the police forces. Socialists, progressives, Marxists, communists and the Social Democrat Party mobilised rioters in 184 cities. Nazi sympathiser George Soros funded the riots. Keith Ellison's son, Jeremiah, who runs the Minneapolis City Council, pledged allegiance to Antifa and led the effort that eliminated the city's police department. By creating racial strife, Ellison allies hoped to defeat President Trump, then change the US constitutional republic to a socialist state. Antifa's revolutionary abolitionist movement have been leading the national effort to deface and destroy over 350 US historical monuments. Communists want Americans to believe they are divided by race. They are not. The only divide is communists versus free Americans. Now, combat veterans for Congress fight to protect and defend the US constitutional republic from domestic enemies and domestic terrorists. So thanks to Captain what's his name, Joseph R. John for that report. And it's a fairly interesting article. But have we the people defined what is a republic? What is socialism? What is communism? All these labels, and too few just regurgitate the words without their own critical thinking applied to the process. And this is where we the people lack badly. Take the word communism in America. It's treated like the olden day lepers. Oh, we don't want communists, they're all Russian and Chinese. That is agency think tank programming. Period. And the fact that so many link it to those countries in 2020, despite the rise of the internet, is telling us we don't think for ourselves enough. Because communists, or communism, if applied correctly, and that's the important term, is actually the best form of government for we the people. Because it's all about fairness and sharing the life force energy. But the better version of that word is one from Tanath, communalism. All about communities and all the people coming together. And all the rest of what you think about communism is your own non-thinking mindset and a set of narratives handed down to you by the media, agencies and politicians who wouldn't know a form of government if they fell over it. And for those who really wish to know what is communism, communism is Zionism, is Hebrew Anunnaki. It tells you that in the article. Who funded it? the George Soros Group. And George Soros is Jewish and Hebrew Anunnaki.